If you ask almost anyone why they drink a glass of water, they'll give you, the most obvious answer in the world. They'll just say, well, because my mouth is dry.
Right. It's just common sense.
Exactly. But what if I told you that your dry mouth is like a complete biological illusion?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What if the real reason you're reaching for that water is because millions of tiny specialized cells buried deep inside your brain are physically shrinking? Like literally like grapes turning into raisins.
Yeah, that's intense.
And they are just screaming at your nervous system to save them.
It completely upends how we think about our own choices, doesn't it? I mean, we walk around believing we are these highly rational, autonomous agents just, making conscious decisions all day.
Right. We think we're in charge.
Exactly. But beneath the surface, we're actually being driven by this wildly complex, hidden architecture of biological alarm.
And ancient social programming, too.
Yes, absolutely. Both of those things are constantly running the show.
Which really brings us to our mission today. For you listening, we are exploring the hidden machinery of human behavior. Why do we do what we do? Why do we feel what we feel?
The big question.
The huge questions. And to answer that, we're doing something pretty unique for this deep dive. We have this foundational, incredibly dense document simply titled Motivation and Emotion.
It's a classic.
It is.
Mhm.
And instead of just, giving you a breezy little summary, we are going to tear it open. We're going to read the source text to you, piece by piece, exactly as it appears.
I love this format.
Me too. Because then we can debate it, challenge it, and really translate the academic theory into the actual mechanisms that are running your life right now.
What's fascinating here is that by looking at the raw text, by confronting these formal psychological frameworks directly, we don't just learn a few fun facts.
Right.
We gain this masterclass in the muddy diagnostic waters of the human mind, from the microscopic chemistry of your brain to like the grand cultural grammar of how you express joy or rage.
Okay, let's unpack this. The document actually lays out its roadmap right at the very top. Let me just read this to you exactly as it's written.
Go for it.
It says, Chapter 8, Motivation and Emotion. Contents, Introduction, Nature of Motivation, Types of Motives, Biological Motives, Psychosocial Motives, Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs.
That's a big one.
Oh, definitely. Continues. Nature of Emotions, Expression of Emotions, Culture and Emotional Expression, Culture and Emotional Labeling, Managing Negative Emotions, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, Box 8.1, Management of Examination Anxiety, Box 8.2, Enhancing Positive Emotions.
That is a massive amount of ground to cover.
It really is. And it anchors all of this with a rather profound opening quote. It reads, Emotion has taught mankind to reason. Marquis de Vauvenargues.
That quote alone could be a 3-hour discussion.
Seriously.
Because for centuries, Western philosophy has treated emotion as the enemy of reason. We have this idea that to be rational, you have to be cold and calculating.
Like a robot.
Right, like Spock. But Vauvenargues flips it entirely. Emotion isn't the opposite of reason, it's the instructor.
Wow, okay. Explain that a bit more.
Well, without the primal emotional drives, fear, desire, the need for connection, we would never have developed the logical reasoning required to build shelters or form societies or invent technologies to satisfy those feelings.
So reason is just the tool we use to get what our emotions actually demand.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so the authors begin setting the stage with a little vignette about 3 different people. Listen to how they establish the core premise here. They write, Sunita, a girl from a little-known town, puts in 10-12 hours of hard work every day in order to get through the various engineering entrance examinations.
Wow, 12 hours.
Yeah, intense. It goes on. Hemant, a physically challenged boy, wants to take part in an expedition and trains himself extensively in a mountaineering institute.
Oh, okay.
And finally, a man saves money from his scholarship so that he can buy a gift for his mother. These are just a few examples which indicate the role motivation plays in human behavior.
So we have 3 individuals engaged in wildly different behaviors.
Very different.
You've got academic grinding, intense physical conditioning, and financial sacrifice.
And the text then connects them. It says, each of these behaviors are caused by an underlying motive. Behavior is goal-driven. Goal-seeking behavior tends to persist until the goal is achieved. For achieving their goals, people plan and undertake different activities.
This is the first fundamental law of psychological physics being laid down here. Behavior is goal-driven.
Meaning we don't just do things for no reason.
Exactly. Humans rarely expend energy randomly. When you see someone acting in a sustained, focused, and especially a difficult way, there is always an underlying deficit or desire they are trying to fulfill.
So it's like a car engine. Sunita, Hemant, and Aman are all driving to completely different destinations, but the motive is the fuel that's actually getting them there.
That's a great analogy. The outward actions look different, but the internal biological and psychological architecture driving them is identical.
Let's look at how the authors connect this drive to our feelings. They write, how is Sunita going to feel if after all the hard work she has put in, she does not succeed or Aman's scholarship money gets stolen?
Oh, that would be devastating.
Right. They continue. Sunita perhaps will be sad and Aman angry.
Mm-hmm.
This chapter will help you to understand the basic concepts of motivation and emotion and related developments in these two areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finishes the intro by saying, the basic emotions, their biological bases, overt expressions, cultural influences, their relationship with motivation, and some techniques to help you manage your emotions better will also be dealt with.
This is a crucial pivot they're making here. What happens when goal-seeking behavior is blocked?
It crashes.
Right. If the environment prevents Sunita or Aman from reaching their goals, that blocked motive instantly generates a high-intensity emotion, sadness or anger.
So it shows that motivation and emotion aren't just, two separate chapters in a textbook. They are literally two sides of the exact same coin. Motivation is the drive toward the goal. And emotion is your internal diagnostic feedback system telling you how well that drive is actually going.
Precisely. If you're making progress, you feel joy or anticipation. If you hit a wall, you feel frustration or despair.
You really can't understand why someone is angry unless you understand what goal was just blocked.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dig into the formal mechanics of this. In the section titled Nature of Motivation, the authors break down the linguistics and the utility of the concept. Here's the first half. They write, the concept of motivation focuses on explaining what moves behavior. In fact, the term motivation is derived from the Latin word movere, referring to movement of activity.
Ver, to move.
It continues, most of our everyday explanation of behavior is given in terms of motives. Why do you come to the school or college? There may be any number of reasons for this behavior.
Right, like learning or socializing.
Exactly. The text says, such as you want to learn or to make friends, you need a diploma or degree to get a good job, you want to make your parents happy, and so on. Some combination of these reasons and others would explain why you choose to go in for higher education.
I love the linguistic breakdown. It takes a very abstract, floaty, psychological concept and grounds it in physics.
How so?
Well, if an object is moving, a force is acting upon it. If a human being is moving, whether that's walking across a room to grab a snack or moving across the country for a new job, a psychological force is acting upon them.
I want to pause and just ask you, the listener, to reflect on your own mover right now. Like, why are you listening to this deep dive?
It's a good question.
Are you trying to optimize your own habits? Are you studying for a psychology exam? Or are you just starved for intellectual stimulation while you commute? Your specific combination of reasons is your current motive.
And the text makes a massive claim about what knowing these motives actually allows us to do.
All right, listen to this next part. It says, motives also help in making predictions about behavior. A person will work hard in school, in sports, in business, in music, and in many other situations if she has a very strong need for achievement.
The holy grail of behavioral science.
Yeah.
Prediction.
It finishes the section by saying, hence, motives are the general states that enable us to make predictions about behavior in many different situations. In other words, motivation is one of the determinants of behavior. Instincts, drives, needs, goals, and incentives come under the broad cluster of motivation.
Prediction is what every psychologist is ultimately trying to achieve.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though. Are we really letting the text claim that human behavior is predictably uniform?
What do you mean?
Like, if someone has a strong need for achievement, does that automatically mean they're going to sweat blood in business, music, and sports?
Ah, I see.
Because I know plenty of highly successful CEOs who are incredibly lazy when it comes to their weekend hobbies. They don't seem to have a generalized achievement state that blankets their whole life.
That is a very valid critique. Psychology often struggles with the gap between generalized traits and situational contexts.
Right.
What the authors are arguing, though, is that motives operate as underlying probabilities. If a person's core dominant engine is the need for achievement, statistically, that engine is going to rev up whenever they are presented with a metric they can conquer.
So it's about the metric.
Yes, sure, a CEO might not care about a casual game of golf, But if you turn that golf game into a high-stakes tournament with a leaderboard, suddenly that dormant achievement motive activates. The motive is the underlying software program. It just needs the right environmental trigger to execute.
Okay, that makes sense. The environment has to match the motive to trigger the behavior.
Okay.
So how does this software program actually run in real time?
They outline a specific algorithm for that.
Yes, under the heading The Motivational Cycle. I'll read it. Psychologists now use the concept of need to describe the motivational properties of behavior. A need is lack or deficit of some necessity.
Step 1. The need.
The text goes on. The condition of need leads to drive. A drive is a state of tension or arousal produced by a need. It energizes random activity.
So let's break this down into steps because this is literally the fundamental blueprint of your daily life. Step 1 is the need, a lack or a deficit.
People often use the metaphor of a car engine here.
Mm-hmm.
You need fuel to drive, your tank is empty. But I think that's too passive. A better analogy is an algorithmic smart thermostat in a house.
Oh, I like that.
You set the thermostat to a comfortable 72 degrees. If a window blows open in winter, the temperature drops to 65. That temperature gap, that deficit, is the need. A physical state of reality has fallen below the required baseline.
Right. And step 2 is the drive. The text calls it a state of tension or arousal.
Yeah.
In our thermostat analogy, the drive isn't the cold air. The drive is the sensor detecting the cold and violently clicking the furnace on. It creates heat, noise, energy, tension.
And the text says this drive energizes random activity. You're freezing, so you don't just sit there. You shiver, you pace. You start rummaging blindly through the closet, looking for a blanket.
You're energized, but it's frantic until you lock onto a solution.
Exactly. And the beauty of evolution is that this tension is deeply, intentionally uncomfortable. If starving, freezing, or being utterly isolated felt pleasant, our ancestors would have just sat under a tree and died.
The tension is a survival whip.
Which leads to the resolution of the cycle. Let me read the rest. When one of the random activities leads to a goal, it reduces the drive, and the organism stops being active. The organism returns to a balanced state.
The balanced state, that's key.
The text finishes. Thus, the cycle of motivational events can be presented as shown in Figure 8.1. And for you listening, Figure 8.1 is a diagram showing a circle. It starts at need, flows to drive, then arousal, to goal-directed behavior, to achievement, then reduction of arousal, and finally cycles back to a blank state before the next need hits.
This brings us to a concept that underpins all of biology: homeostasis.
Right.
Homeostasis is that balanced state they're talking about.
So, back to the thermostat analogy. The random activity rummaging in the closet leads to the goal. You find the heavy wool blanket, you wrap it around yourself.
Your body temperature rises back to 72 degrees.
The thermostat clicks the furnace off, the reduction of arousal happens, you stop pacing, you stop shivering, and you just sit back down on the couch in a state of balance.
Until 2 hours later when you get thirsty.
Oh, of course.
And a brand new deficit creates a brand new tension, and the wheel spins all over again. We are essentially just complex biological machines constantly chasing our own equilibrium, trying to extinguish the tiny fires of discomfort our bodies keep lighting.
It sounds utterly exhausting when you put it like that. So what exactly are these deficits that keep knocking us off balance? The authors divide them into two massive categories. Let's read the section, Types of Motives.
Let's do it.
Basically, there are two types of motives, biological and psychosocial. Biological motives are also known as physiological motives, as they are guided mostly by the physiological mechanisms of the body.
The hardware.
Right, and then psychosocial motives, on the other hand, are primarily learned from the individual's interactions with the various environmental factors.
A classic division: the body versus the environment, nature versus nurture.
But listen to how quickly they complicate this. They write, however, both types of motives are interdependent on each other. That is, in some kind of situations, the biological factors may trigger a motive, whereas in some other situations, the psychosocial factors may trigger the motive.
It's never just one or the other.
Exactly, they conclude. Hence, you should keep in mind that no motive is absolutely biological or psychosocial per se. Rather, they are aroused in the individual with varying combinations.
What's fascinating here is how the authors refuse to let us neatly compartmentalize the human experience. They introduce the clean boxes and then immediately say, actually, the boxes are a lie.
Right. Take eating. If your blood sugar crashes, you are driven to eat a sandwich. That is deeply biological.
Yes.
But if you go to a fancy restaurant on a first date and order a wildly expensive dessert you don't even have room for, just to impress the other person, that is entirely psychosocial. The action is eating, but the engine is completely different.
The lines blur constantly, but to build a proper understanding, we really have to start with the foundational hardware before we look at the software. We have to start with biology.
Let's do it. Here is how the text introduces biological motives.
Yeah,
The biological or physiological approach to explain motivation is the earliest attempt to understand causes of behavior.
that makes sense.
Most of the theories, which develop later, carry traces of the influence of the biological approach. The approach adhering to the concept of adaptive act holds that organisms have needs, internal physiological imbalances, that produce drive, which stimulates behavior leading to certain actions towards achieving certain goals, which reduce the drive.
So this is basically a recap of the homeostasis cycle, but grounded strictly in flesh and blood, internal physiological imbalances.
Yes. And then the authors bring up a word that gets thrown around a lot in pop psychology, but they define it very specifically. They write, the earliest explanations of motivation relied on the concept of instinct. The term instinct denotes inborn patterns of behavior that are biologically determined rather than learned.
Inborn patterns.
Some common human instincts include curiosity, flight, repulsion, reproduction, parental care, etc. Instincts are innate tendencies found in all members of a species that direct behavior in predictable ways.
You don't have to go to school to learn how to be repulsed by the smell of rotting meat.
Exactly.
A newborn infant doesn't need a tutorial on how to cry when they're separated from their caregiver. The hardware comes pre-installed with these defense mechanisms.
And the text uses a great word, impetus. Let me read the end of this section. The term instinct most approximately refers to an urge to do something. Instinct has an impetus which drives the organism to do something to reduce that impetus. Some of the basic biological needs explained by this approach are hunger, thirst, and sex, which are essential for the sustenance of the individual.
It's an urge with momentum. But those three big hitters they identify at the end, hunger, thirst, and sex, are where this text really starts to shatter our common misconceptions.
Let's break down the hunger section first because it proves how little we actually understand our own bodies. Here's the first part. When someone is hungry, the need for food dominates everything else. It motivates people to obtain and consume food. Of course, we must eat to live, but what makes you feel hungry?
So they set up the mystery. What actually pulls the alarm?
Studies have indicated that many events inside and outside the body may trigger hunger or inhibit it. The stimuli for hunger include stomach contractions, which signify that the stomach is empty, a low concentration of glucose in the blood, a low level of protein, and the amount of fat stored in the body.
Okay, so a lot is going on.
And it gets deeper. The liver also responds to the lack of bodily fuel by sending nerve impulses to the brain.
If you ask a child why they're hungry, they will point to their stomach. And honestly, most adults think of hunger as just an empty balloon that needs to be refilled.
Same here.
But this text reveals that your body is acting as an incredibly sophisticated internal laboratory.
It's monitoring glucose, protein, and fat levels in real time. Your blood is constantly being sampled. And the liver. I had no idea the liver was so involved.
It's like a biochemical auditor just noticing the fuel deficit and sending frantic nerve impulses up the spinal cord to the brain.
But that's just the internal chemistry. The external world plays a massive, often overriding role.
Right.
The authors write, the aroma, taste, or appearance of food may also result in a desire to eat. It may be noted that none of these alone gives you the feeling that you are hungry.
Let's pause on that.
They finish the paragraph. All in combination act with external factors, such as taste, color, by observing others eating and the smell of food, etc., to help you understand that you are hungry. Thus, it can be said that our food intake is regulated by a complex feeding satiety system located in the hypothalamus, liver, and other parts of the body, as well as the external cues available in the environment. I have to challenge this phrase, though. None of these alone gives you the feeling that you are hungry, really. If I lock myself in a dark, odorless room for 3 days, my glucose will crash and my liver will send signals. I will definitely feel hungry without any external cues. Are the authors overstating the case here?
It's a matter of how we define the conscious experience of hunger versus the physiological state of starvation.
Okay, explain that.
Yes, in extreme deprivation, the internal alarms are deafening. But in our modern, everyday lives, where we rarely reach true starvation, the hypothalamus, which is the central processing chip for all these signals, acts like a mixing board. It rarely relies on just one data point. Have you ever been deep in focus on a project, totally ignoring your empty stomach, until someone walks into the room with a box of hot pizza?
Instantly.
Yeah.
The smell hits me and I feel like I'm starving.
Exactly. Your liver and stomach were already sending low-level signals, but your brain was just ignoring them. The external cue, the smell, combined with the internal data to cross the threshold into conscious, undeniable hunger.
Oh, wow.
Conversely, you can be completely full after a huge dinner, but the visual cue of a beautiful dessert can hijack the hypothalamus and generate a sudden need to eat more. The system is highly vulnerable to the environment.
Which is terrifying for anyone trying to stick to a diet. You aren't just fighting your stomach, you are fighting the visual and olfactory triggers of the entire world around you.
That's a tough battle.
Okay, let's move to a mechanism that is even more astonishingly precise. This brings us back to the hook we opened the show with. Let's read the section on thirst.
The water glass illusion.
Right. The text says, what would happen to you if you were deprived of water for a long time? What makes you feel thirsty? When we are deprived of water for a period of several hours, the mouth and throat become dry, which leads to dehydration of body tissues.
Okay, so they start with the obvious.
Drinking water is necessary to wet a dry mouth. But a dry mouth does not always result in water drinking behavior. In fact, processes within the body itself control thirst and drinking of water.
So again, they are dismantling the obvious answer. A dry mouth is just a localized symptom. You can have a dry mouth because you're nervous or you're breathing heavy, but you don't necessarily feel a deep systemic thirst.
Here is what is actually happening behind the scenes. They write, water must get into the tissues sufficiently to remove the dryness of mouth and throat. Motivation to drink water is mainly triggered by the conditions of the body. Loss of water from cells, and reduction of blood volume.
Loss of water from the cells.
When water is lost by bodily fluids, water leaves the interior of the cells.
This is the critical mechanism. When you sweat or simply exist without drinking, your overall blood volume drops. The fluids surrounding your cells become more concentrated with salts.
Like it's getting too salty.
Exactly. And to balance this out, water is physically sucked out of the interior of your body's cells through osmosis.
Like we said earlier, imagine plump grapes slowly shriveling into raisins. That is cell dehydration. But how does the brain know this microscopic shriveling is happening? The text gives us the answer, and it sounds like science fiction.
It really does.
It says, the anterior hypothalamus contains nerve cells called osmoreceptors, which generate nerve impulses in case of cell dehydration.
Osmoreceptors. If we connect this to the bigger picture of evolutionary engineering, this is a masterclass in design. These are specialized neurons located in the front part of the hypothalamus.
How do they work? Do they, taste the salt in the blood?
No, it's actually mechanical.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They function almost like tiny water balloons. As the blood becomes concentrated and pulls water out of the cells, it pulls water out of the osmoreceptors too. As these specific neurons physically shrink and change shape, that mechanical deformation causes them to fire electrical impulses.
That's insane.
The more they shrink, the faster they fire. That frantic electrical storm in your hypothalamus is what you experience as the desperate psychological urge to find water.
That is mind-blowing. When I drink a glass of water, I'm not wetting my throat. I am literally trying to reinflate shrinking osmoreceptors inside my brain so they stop electrocuting my nervous system.
It makes reaching for a water bottle feel like a high-stakes rescue mission, doesn't it?
Seriously. The homeostasis cycle here is brutally strict.
It is a matter of cellular life and death.
But the final biological motive the text covers operates under a completely different set of rules. Let's read the sex section.
Okay.
One of the most powerful drives in both animals and human beings is the sex drive. Motivation to engage in sexual activity is a very strong factor influencing human behavior.
Right, undeniable.
However, sex is far more than a biological motive. It is different from other primary motives, hunger, thirst, in many ways like, A, sexual activity is not necessary for an individual's survival.
Exception A.
Homeostasis, the tendency of the organism as a whole to maintain constancy or to attempt to restore equilibrium if constancy is disturbed, is not the goal of sexual activity.
Exception B.
And C, sex drive develops with age, etc.
So the authors are establishing the boundaries of the biological model. Yes, the sex drive is a primary hormonally driven imperative, but it breaks the rules we just established for hunger and thirst.
Let's unpack those exceptions. Exception A, not necessary for an individual's survival. If I ignore my osmoreceptors, I die in a matter of days. If I ignore my liver screaming for glucose, I starve.
Right.
But if an individual never engages in sexual activity, Their physiological body will continue to function perfectly fine until old age. The species requires it, but the individual does not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And exception B is profound. Homeostasis is not the goal. Remember, hunger and thirst are about fixing a deficit to return to a calm, flat baseline. You're cold, you get warm, you relax.
Yeah.
But the sex drive actively seeks out tension and heightened arousal. It doesn't operate simply to extinguish an uncomfortable deficit. It operates to experience the peak.
That makes a lot of sense. And exception C notes that it develops with age, typically surging during puberty with hormonal shifts, whereas the machinery for hunger and thirst is fully operational the second we're born.
All of which leads to the text's final conclusion on this topic.
Great, let me read the last sentence. In case of lower animals, it depends on many physiological conditions. In case of human beings, the sex drive is very closely regulated biologically. Sometimes it's very difficult to classify sex purely as a biological drive.
Meaning for a fruit fly, it's almost entirely an automated physiological program.
But for human beings, it is so hopelessly entangled with romance, status, identity, and cultural norms that calling it purely biological misses half the picture.
Which serves as the perfect bridge. We've mapped the body. Now we have to map the environment.
Right.
We have to look at the motives that aren't driven by shrinking cells, but by the complex, invisible webs of human society.
Welcome to the world of psychosocial motives. The text introduces them like this. Social motives are mostly learned or acquired. Social groups such as family, neighborhood, friends, and relatives do contribute a lot in acquiring social motives.
So they're learned.
Exactly. These are complex forms of motives mainly resulting from the individual's interaction with their social environment.
So the hardware the brain is capable of learning, but it is the environment that writes the software. You aren't born with a burning desire to win a gold medal or get a corner office. You learn those motives from the people around you.
The first one they dive into is the most foundational, the need for affiliation. The text reads, most of us need company or friend or want to maintain some form of relationship with others. Nobody likes to remain alone all the time.
The herd instinct.
As soon as people see some kinds of similarities among themselves or they like each other, they form a group. Formation of group or collectivity is an important feature of human life.
It's the need for the pack, but why do we do it?
The authors explain. Often people try desperately to get close to other people, to seek their help, and to become members of their group. Seeking other human beings and wanting to be close to them both physically and psychologically is called affiliation. It involves motivation for social contact. Need for affiliation is aroused when individuals feel threatened or helpless, and also when they are happy. People high on this need are motivated to seek the company of others and to maintain friendly relationships with other people.
It's interesting how they frame it around threat.
I'm fascinated by that line. Need for affiliation is aroused when individuals feel threatened or helpless. I think about a time my flight was delayed for 12 hours due to a massive snowstorm.
Oh, that's the worst.
Everyone in the terminal was stranded, and within an hour, people who would normally completely ignore each other were suddenly sharing snacks, watching each other's bags, and forming these intense, temporary micro-tribes.
Yep.
We felt helpless against the weather, so our brains aggressively forced us to affiliate.
It's a brilliant example. Evolutionary biology tells us that an isolated human on the prehistoric savanna was a dead human. If you were alone, you were prey.
Right.
So the brain evolved an alarm system. When we feel threatened or anxious, our motivation for social contact spikes dramatically. We seek the herd for physical protection and psychological regulation.
Does modern science back that up?
Oh, absolutely. Modern neuroscience shows that being socially isolated literally activates the exact same pain matrix in your brain as physical injury. Loneliness actually hurts because the brain is treating isolation as a lethal threat.
But the text also notes we seek affiliation when we're happy. We don't just want to mitigate fear, we want to share joy. It's the reason you immediately text your best friend when you get good news. But not all social motives are warm and fuzzy. Let's read the section on the need for power.
This is where it gets a little dark.
Need for power is an ability of a person to produce intended effects on the behavior and emotions of another person.
What a blunt definition.
The various goals of power motivation are to influence, control, persuade, lead, and charm others, and most importantly, to enhance one's own reputation in the eyes of other people.
It is almost Machiavellian to produce intended effects on the behavior and emotions of another person. It's not necessarily evil, though teachers use power to inspire, parents use power to protect them. But the core motive is control and influence.
And the authors highlight a specific psychological framework to explain how this manifests. They write, David McClelland, 1975, described 4 general ways of expression of the power motive. First, people do things to gain feeling of power and strength from sources outside themselves by reading stories about sports stars or attaching themselves to a popular figure.
Let's stop right there, because this explains so much of modern culture. Stage 1 is gaining power by proxy.
Right. Basking in reflected glory. But I want to challenge how benign this sounds. Reading stories about sports stars. We see people riot, overturn cars, and burn couches when their local sports team wins or loses.
Very true.
They aren't on the team, they didn't play the game. Why is their central nervous system reacting as if their own personal dominance has been threatened or validated?
Because the human brain is remarkably good at blurring the boundary between the self and the group. When an individual adopts a team or a political figure as their source of external power, a victory for the team is processed neurologically as a victory for the self.
So they literally feel the win.
The dopamine hit is completely real, and a threat to the team is processed as a physical threat to the self, triggering real aggression. It is a very potent, sometimes dangerous way to satisfy the power motive.
Okay, what about the next stage? The text continues. Second, power can also be felt from sources within us and may be expressed by building up the body and mastering urges and impulses.
This is a massive shift. The power motive turned entirely inward.
So the guy spending 4 hours a day at the gym, lifting heavier and heavier weights, or the person doing a grueling 10-day silent fasting retreat to conquer their own cravings, they're fulfilling a need for power just as much as a politician is.
Absolutely. It is the drive for absolute dominion over the self, the feeling of, I have conquered this physical form, I have mastered this chaotic mind. Its autonomy is a profound expression of power. You aren't controlling others, you are rendering yourself uncontrollable by your base urges.
Wow. Then we move outward again. Stage 3. Third, people do things as individuals to have an impact on others. For example, a person argues or competes with another individual in order to have an impact or influence on that person.
Interpersonal dominance. This is the dinner table debater, the internet troll.
Yes. The person who doesn't even care what the argument is about, they just have to have the last word.
Right.
They aren't searching for the truth. They're trying to produce an emotional effect on you. Frustration, submission, so they can feel powerful.
And finally, stage 4.
Fourth, people do things as members of organizations to have an impact on others, as in the case of the leader of a political party. The individual may use the party apparatus to influence others.
Institutional power. The CEO, the mayor, the principal, using a lever to move 1,000 people at once.
And the text closes this section with a critical caveat. However, for any individual, one of these ways of expressing power motivation may dominate, but with age and life experiences, it varies.
Which is very true. A teenager might satisfy their power motive through stage 1, obsessing over a pop star.
And then in their 20s, they hit stage 2 and get obsessed with bodybuilding.
And in their 50s, they run for city council in stage 4. The motive remains, the vehicle evolves.
Let's look at another highly visible vehicle in our society, achievement. Here's the text on the need for achievement. You might have observed some students work very hard and compete with others for good marks grades in the examination, as good marks grades will create opportunities for higher studies and better job prospects.
It's everywhere.
It is the achievement motivation, which refers to the desire of a person to meet standards of excellence. Need for achievement, also known as NAC, energizes and directs behavior as well as influences the perception of situations.
NAC. It's an abbreviation you'll see constantly in organizational psychology. It is the drive to overcome obstacles and meet high standards.
Where does it come from? The authors explain. During the formative years of social development, children acquire achievement motivation. The sources from which they learn it include parents, other role models, and sociocultural influences.
Again, nurture over nature. If you are raised in a household where a B+ is treated as a failure, or a society where economic productivity is tied to moral worth, your NAC software gets written very aggressively.
But here's the part that fascinates me. How do these high achievers actually operate? The text reveals a counterintuitive truth.
Oh, this is the best part.
It says, persons high in achievement motivation tend to prefer tasks that are moderately difficult and challenging. They have stronger than average desire for feedback on their performance, that is, to know how they are doing, so that they can adjust their goals to meet the challenge.
Moderately difficult.
Let's unpack this paradox.
Yeah.
If you have a burning desire to achieve excellence, shouldn't you naturally gravitate toward the hardest, most impossible tasks available to prove your worth? Why do they prefer moderately difficult tasks?
It's one of the most elegant findings in behavioral psychology. Imagine you give someone high in a knack a choice of 3 targets to shoot an arrow at. One is 2 feet away, one is 30 feet away, one is 300 feet away.
Okay, if they shoot the one that is 2 feet away, it's a guaranteed hit. But there is no pride in it.
Yeah.
Anyone could do it. It proves no excellence.
Exactly, but what if they shoot at the one 300 feet away?
They will almost certainly miss.
And if they miss, they can just blame the wind or the impossible distance. The task was so hard that failure tells them nothing about their actual competence. It's a psychological safety net.
Ah, I see.
But the target, at 30 feet, the moderately difficult task that requires skill, focus, and effort. If they miss, it's their fault. If they hit it, it's a genuine, undeniable reflection of their excellence. They prefer moderate difficulty because it provides the most accurate, reliable feedback on their personal competence.
They aren't trying to be martyrs. They're trying to measure themselves. They want to know the score.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at one final psychosocial motive. And this one is refreshing because it doesn't seem to be about dominating others, affiliating out of fear, or proving your worth. Let's read curiosity and exploration.
A fun one.
Often people engage in activities without a clear goal or purpose, but they derive some kind of pleasure out of it. It is a motivational tendency to act without any specific identifiable goal.
No goal at all.
The tendency to seek for a novel experience, gain pleasure by obtaining information, etc., are signs of curiosity. Hence, curiosity describes behavior whose primary motive appears to remain in the activities themselves.
This breaks the mold entirely. Up until now, every motive we've discussed, from shivering for warmth to studying for an exam, was a means to an end. But curiosity is an end in itself.
The primary motive remains in the activity.
It is pure intrinsic motivation.
The authors dive into why this exists. What will happen if the sky falls on us? Questions of this kind, what will happen if, stimulate intellectuals to find answers.
Just asking for the sake of asking.
Studies show that this curiosity behavior is not only limited to human beings, animals too show the same kind of behavior. We are driven to explore the environment by our curiosity and our need for sensory stimulation. The need for varied types of sensory stimulations is closely related to curiosity. It is the basic motive, and exploration and curiosity are the expressions of it.
The need for sensory stimulation. Our brains are fundamentally pattern recognition machines. But if a pattern repeats infinitely with zero variation, the brain actually begins to starve for new data.
The text makes this incredibly relatable. It says, "Our ignorance about a number of things around us becomes a powerful motivator to explore the world. We get easily bored with repetitive experiences, so we look for something new."
We crave novelty.
In the case of infants and small children, this motive is very dominant. They get satisfaction from being allowed to explore, which is reflected in their smiling and babbling. Children become easily distressed when the motive to explore is discouraged, as you have read in Chapter 3.
Yeah.
I think about watching a baby play. They will pick up a wooden block, stare at it, taste it, bang it against the floor, throw it, and babble at it. They aren't building a house. They aren't trying to achieve a goal.
Right, they are just feeding their rapidly developing neural networks with novel sensory input.
And adults are no different. We just use more sophisticated blocks.
Exactly. We travel to foreign cities where we don't speak the language. We read dense murder mysteries. We do crossword puzzles. None of these resolve a biological deficit or increase our social power. They simply feed our brain's absolute requirement for novelty.
Without the "what will happen if" engine, human civilization would have stagnated in the caves.
100%.
So we have this massive conflicting menu of motives. The liver is screaming for glucose, the osmoreceptors want water, the social brain wants affiliation, the ego wants power, and the mind wants novelty.
It's a crowded house in there.
How does the human organism prioritize all these competing demands? If I am thirsty, lonely, and curious all at once, what do I do first? To answer this, the authors introduce what is arguably the most famous framework in all of psychology. Let's read the section on Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
The famous pyramid.
There are various views on human motivation. The most popular among these is given by Abraham H. Maslow, 1968-1970. He attempted to portray a picture of human behavior by arranging the various needs in a hierarchy.
Maslow. You literally cannot take a single management, education, or psychology class without running into his pyramid.
His viewpoint about motivation is very popular because of its theoretical and applied value, which is popularly known as the theory of self-actualization.
Let's build that pyramid for the listener, starting from the ground up.
Okay, the text reads, Maslow's model can be conceptualized as a pyramid in which the bottom of this hierarchy represents basic physiological or biological needs, which are basic to survival, such as hunger, thirst, etc.
That's level 1.
Only when these needs are met, the need to be free from threatened danger arises. This refers to the safety needs of physical and psychological nature.
So we have level 1 and level 2, the foundation. If you are literally starving to death, if your physiological needs are unmet, you do not care about your reputation. You do not care about art or philosophy.
No.
Your entire cognitive apparatus is hyper-focused on securing calories. Once you have the calories, your mind unlocks level 2, safety. You look for a shelter, you lock the door, you make sure a predator isn't going to eat you while you digest your food.
Once you are fed and safe, the social needs kick in. The text continues. Next comes the need to seek out other people, to love and to be loved.
Level 3, belongingness. This is our need for affiliation, finding a partner, building a family, joining a community.
After these needs are fulfilled, the individual strives for esteem, i.e. the need to develop a sense of self-worth.
Level 4, esteem. This is our need for achievement and power. You don't just want to be in the group, you want to be respected by the group, and you want to respect yourself.
And finally, the pinnacle. The text reads, the next higher need in the hierarchy reflects an individual's motive towards the fullest development of potential, i.e. self-actualization. A self-actualized person is self-aware, socially responsive, creative, spontaneous, open to novelty and challenge. She also has a sense of humor and capacity for deep interpersonal relationships.
Level 5, self-actualization. Becoming everything you are uniquely capable of becoming. A musician making music not for money, which is safety, or fame, which is esteem, but simply because they must express the music inside them.
But the authors offer a sobering reality check on this peak.
Yeah.
They say, lower-level needs, physiological, in the hierarchy dominate as long as they are unsatisfied. Once they are adequately satisfied, the higher needs occupy the individual's attention and effort. However, it must be noted that very few people reach the highest level because most people are concerned more with the lower-level needs.
It's true. Most people are trapped managing the basement of the pyramid. They are stressing over rent, struggling to find community, fighting for basic respect at work. They rarely get the luxury of pure self-actualization.
Now, this model seems incredibly logical, but I want to throw a wrench into it, and surprisingly, the textbook does too.
Oh, the activity box.
Yes. There is a box right after this section, Activity 8.1, that demands we question the pyramid. It reads, actual actions sometimes contradict the hierarchy of needs. Soldiers, police officers, and fire personnel have been known to protect others by facing very endangering situations, seemingly in direct contradiction to the prominence of safety needs.
It breaks the rules.
Why does it happen? Discuss it in your group and then with your teacher.
So what does this all mean for Maslow?
If Maslow's right, level 1, physiological survival, and level 2, safety must always dominate. You cannot pursue higher ideals if you are on fire. Yet, a firefighter will actively run into a burning building.
Right.
A soldier will jump on a grenade to save their squad. A mother will starve herself to give her last piece of bread to her child. They are actively destroying their base layers for a higher ideal. Doesn't this completely invalidate Maslow's theory?
It is the ultimate paradox of human motivation, and it's where Maslow's model shows both its age and its cultural bias. Maslow built this hierarchy largely studying highly successful, individualistic Western figures. It's a very me-first progression. I feed myself, I secure myself, I build my esteem.
Yeah, but in other cultures.
In many collectivist cultures and in profound moments of moral duty, the pyramid inverts.
The need for affiliation or self-actualized purpose overrides the biology.
Exactly. When a firefighter runs into danger, their biological alarms are screaming at them to flee. Their amygdala is terrified. But their prefrontal cortex, heavily conditioned by psychosocial motives of duty, honor, and deep affiliation with their community, acts as an override switch.
That's powerful.
The human mind is uniquely capable of elevating an abstract moral ideal above physical reality. The motive to be a good person or to protect the innocent can conquer the drive for safety. It's not that the pyramid is entirely wrong. It's that humans have the cognitive willpower to temporarily bypass the lower floors to live on the roof.
That is incredibly profound. We are bound by our biology, but we are not slaves to it. We can choose what drives us.
Well said.
Okay, we have mapped out the drive half of the equation. We know the motives. Now we must transition to the other side of the coin, the reaction, the
Oh,
emotion.
the feedback system.
Right. The text starts this section, Nature of Emotions, with a quick vignette about a group of students getting their exam results. Let's read it. Swati is very happy. Her examination result has been declared today, and she has topped the class. She's feeling euphoric.
Good for Swati.
However, her friend Pranoy is feeling sad, as he has not done well. Among her friends, some are feeling jealous of Swati's achievement. Jeevan, who has not performed up to his expectation, is angry with himself. He feels unhappy that his parents would be very disappointed.
We see the direct consequence of the motivational cycle here.
Joy, sorrow, hope, love, excitement, anger, hate, and many such feelings are experienced in the course of the day by all of us.
So, Swati's motive to achieve was fulfilled. Her system generates joy. Pranoy's motive was blocked. His system generates sadness. Jeevan's failure threatens his affiliation with his parents. His system generates anger directed inward.
But the authors quickly clarify our vocabulary. We use words very sloppily in everyday life, but in psychology, precision is everything. They write, the term emotion is often considered synonymous with the terms feeling and mood. Feeling denotes the pleasure or pain dimension of emotion, which usually involves bodily functions.
Right.
Mood is an affective state of long duration, but of lesser intensity than emotion. Both these terms are narrower than the concept of emotion.
They are completely different things.
Let me finish this bit. Emotions are a complex pattern of arousal, subjective feeling, and cognitive interpretation. Emotions, as we experience them, move us internally, and this process involves physiological as well as psychological reactions. Emotions is a subjective feeling, and the experience of emotions varies from person to person.
Okay, let's unpack this. Emotion, feeling, and mood are not the same thing. Let's use an analogy. A feeling is the raw, immediate physical sensation, the jolt of pain when you stub your toe, or the warmth in your chest.
And a mood.
A mood is like the climate of a region. It lasts for hours or days, operating in the background like a low-grade grumpiness or a cheerful disposition.
And an emotion.
An emotion is a thunderstorm.
Oh, I like that.
It is acute, intense, and complex. As the text states, it requires 3 ingredients. Physiological arousal, like your heart racing, the subjective feeling, the pleasure or pain, and crucially, cognitive interpretation. You have to think about what is happening to fully experience the emotion.
So if there are all these thunderstorms happening, psychologists naturally want to categorize them. The text discusses the debate over basic emotions. It says, in psychology, attempts have been made to identify basic emotions. It has been noted that at least 6 emotions are experienced and recognized everywhere. These are anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, and surprise.
The baseline 6 that almost every researcher agrees on.
NCERT has proposed a set of 10 basic emotions, i.e. joy, surprise, anger, disgust, contempt, fear, shame, guilt, interest, and excitement, with combinations of them resulting in other emotional blends.
NCERT expands it. He adds things like shame, guilt, and contempt.
But another researcher disagrees. The text continues. According to Plutchik, there are 8 basic or primary emotions. All other emotions result from various mixtures of these basic emotions. He arranged these emotions in 4 pairs of opposites, i.e. joy, sadness, acceptance, disgust, fear, anger, and surprise, anticipation.
Right.
I have a mechanical question about this. How do researchers actually test if an emotion is basic? Why does Plutchik say 8 but NCERT says 10? How do you test if contempt is a fundamental building block of the human mind, or just a mix of anger and disgust?
It's a great question, and it really comes down to methodology. Researchers test for basic emotions by looking for universality across isolated cultures.
How so?
They take photos of facial expressions and show them to tribes in Papua New Guinea, office workers in Tokyo, and farmers in Ohio. If everyone, regardless of their culture, instantly recognizes a face as fear, that's a strong candidate for a basic emotion. It means it's hardwired biologically.
Oh, okay.
Plutchik approached it from an evolutionary survival standpoint, pairing them up as functional opposites, like approach versus avoid. NCERT argued that emotions like guilt and contempt have distinct, universal physiological markers and microexpressions, even if they develop slightly later in childhood.
It's like arguing over the primary colors on a painter's palette.
That's exactly what it is.
Once you have your primary colors, whether it's 8 or 10, you mix it. You mix joy and anticipation. You get optimism. You mix disgust and anger. You get contempt.
Yeah.
But the text notes that we don't all experience these colors the same way. It points to a highly controversial variable. It says, emotions vary in their intensity, high, low, and quality, happiness, sadness, fear. Subjective factors and situational context influence the experience of emotions. These factors are gender, personality, and psychopathology of certain kinds.
Pay close attention to what they say next.
Evidence indicates that women experience all the emotions except anger more intensely than men. Men are prone to experience high intensity and frequency of anger. This gender difference has been attributed to the social roles attached to men, competitiveness, and women, affiliation and caring.
Right.
I would push back on this, or at least examine the framing. Women experience all emotions except anger more intensely than men. Is the text claiming this is a hardwired biological difference in male and female brains?
Notice very carefully how the authors attribute the cause in that final sentence. They don't cite hormones, chromosomes, or brain structure. They explicitly state, this gender difference has been attributed to the social roles attached to men and women.
Right. Competitiveness versus affiliation and caring.
The authors are leaning heavily into this psychosocial explanation. From the moment children are born, many cultures socialize boys and girls differently regarding emotional expression. Little boys are often discouraged from expressing sadness or fear. Boys don't cry, but anger is tolerated or even rewarded in sports as competitiveness.
And for girls.
Little girls are often praised for empathy and emotional attunement, but penalized for expressing anger, which is deemed unladylike. Over decades, these social scripts dictate not just how people express emotions, but literally how intensely they allow themselves to consciously experience them.
The culture shapes the internal weather, which is a perfect segue into how we actually broadcast that weather to the rest of the world. Let's read the section, Expression of Emotions.
Let's do it.
Do you get to know that your friend is happy or sad or indifferent? Does she understand your feelings? Emotion is an internal experience not directly observable by others.
We are locked inside our own skulls. I cannot directly see the sadness in your mind. I can only collect the data you are leaking outward and run it through my own decoder.
Emotions are inferred from verbal and nonverbal expressions. These verbal and nonverbal expressions act as the channels of communication and enable an individual to express one's emotions and to understand the feelings of others.
And the authors break down exactly what those data channels are.
Right. In the section Culture and Emotional Expression, they write, the verbal channel of communication is composed of spoken words as well as other vocal features of speech, like pitch and loudness of the voice. These nonverbal aspects of the voice and temporal characteristics of speech are called paralanguage.
Paralanguage is everything about speech except the words. It is the music of your voice.
I can say the phrase, oh great, in a high-pitched, fast cadence to show genuine excitement. Or I can say, oh great, in a low, slow, monotone groan to show absolute sarcastic disgust. The words are identical. The paralanguage carries 100% of the emotional payload.
And we process paralanguage incredibly fast, often before we even process the vocabulary.
But the body speaks even louder. The text continues. Other nonverbal channels include facial expression, kinetic, gesture, posture, movement of the body, and proximal physical distance during face-to-face interaction behaviors.
Kinetic behavior is the clenching of fists, the slumping of shoulders. Proximal behavior is fascinating.
How so?
If I step aggressively into your personal space just 2 inches from your nose, I am communicating dominance and anger without saying a word or raising a fist. Proximity is a volume dial for emotion.
But the undisputed king of emotional broadcasting is the face. The authors write, facial expression is the most common channel of emotional communication. The amount and kind of information conveyed by the face is easy to comprehend as the face is exposed to the full view of others.
Yes, the face.
Facial expressions can convey the intensity, as well as the pleasantness or unpleasantness of the individual's emotional state. Facial expressions play an important role in our everyday lives. There has been some research evidence supporting Darwin's view that facial expressions for basic emotions, joy, fear, anger, disgust, sadness, and surprise, are inborn and universal.
Darwin noticed that no matter where you go on Earth, a genuine smile uses the exact same facial muscles. A scowl of anger lowers the brow and tightens the lips universally. The hardware is hardwired.
But the authors beautifully illustrate how culture takes that basic hardware and choreographs it into high art. Listen to this observation on body movement. Bodily movements further facilitate the communication of emotions. Can you feel the difference between your body movements when you feel angry and movements when you feel shy?
Of course.
Theater and drama provide an excellent opportunity to understand the impact of body movements in communicating emotions. The roles of gestures and proximal behaviors are also significant. You must have seen how in Indian classical dances like Bharatanatyam, Odissi, Kuchipudi, Kathak, and others, emotions are expressed with the help of movements of eyes, legs, and fingers.
It's mesmerizing to watch.
The dancers are trained rigorously in the grammar of body movement and nonverbal communication to express joy, sorrow, love, anger, and various other forms of emotional states.
The grammar of body movement. What an exquisite phrase. It implies that emotional expression has syntax and rules, just like spoken language.
Right.
In Indian classical dance, a specific positioning of the fingers, a mudra, combined with a precise dart of the eyes, can communicate an entire paragraph of tragic love or divine fury. But if you don't know the grammar of that culture, you just see a hand moving. The meaning is lost in translation.
And this cultural grammar affects our everyday interactions in ways we rarely notice. The text points out a subtle but profound difference. It says, the processes involved in emotions have been known to be influenced by culture. Cultural differences have also been found in the gaze behavior.
Eye contact.
It has been observed that the Latin Americans and the Southern Europeans direct their gaze to the eyes of the interactant. Asians, in particular Indians and Pakistanis, prefer a peripheral gaze, looking away from the conversational partner during an interaction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global communication, this is where massive misunderstandings occur.
How does that play out?
Well, if a Southern European manager is speaking to a Pakistani employee, the manager expects direct, locked eye contact as a sign of respect and honesty. But the employee, operating under their cultural grammar, might use a peripheral gaze looking slightly away as their sign of respect and deference.
Oh, I see.
The manager thinks they are being evasive. The employee thinks, I am being polite. They are experiencing a complete breakdown in emotional communication simply because they are operating on different cultural operating systems.
That is wild. It shows how much we project our own rules onto others. But the most mind-bending example of cultural influence is found in the next section. It asks a profound question. Does language just describe what we feel, or does it actually create what we feel?
Oh, this is the Sapir-Whorf part.
Yes. Let's read the section, Culture and Emotional Labeling. Basic emotions also vary in the extent of elaboration and categorical labels. The Tahitian language includes 46 labels for the English word anger.
I still can't believe that.
When asked to label freely, the North American subjects produced 40 different responses for the facial expression of anger and 81 different responses for the facial expression of contempt. The Japanese produced varied emotional labels for facial expressions of happiness, 10 labels, anger, 8 labels, and disgust, 6 labels.
I cannot get past that first fact. The Tahitian language has 46 distinct labels for anger. 46.
It forces us to confront the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, right?
Right.
The idea that the structure of a language determines a native speaker's perception and categorization of experience.
Exactly. If you are an English speaker, your buckets for anger are pretty chunky. Annoyed, mad, furious, enraged. But if you are Tahitian, you might have a specific word for the anger you feel when a sudden storm ruins your crops, versus the anger you feel when someone steals from you.
Because they have 46 distinct words, their lived, subjective experience of anger must be incredibly textured, nuanced, and granular. They can identify the exact flavor of the emotion.
But look at the North Americans, 81 different responses for the facial expression of contempt. What does that say about Western culture?
It suggests a cultural hypersensitivity to status, judgment, and being looked down upon. We've built an incredibly vast vocabulary to describe exactly how someone is dismissing us. The authors then trace this back to ancient roots. They write, ancient Chinese literature cites 7 emotions, namely joy, anger, sadness, fear, love, dislike, and liking. Ancient Indian literature identifies 8 such emotions, namely love, mirth, energy, wonder, anger, grief, disgust, and fear.
Wow.
In Western literature, certain emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust are uniformly treated as basic to human beings. Emotions like surprise, contempt, shame, and guilt are not accepted as basic to all.
Notice how the ancient foundations differ. Ancient Indian literature includes mirth, energy, and wonder. Wonder isn't on the standard Western list of basic emotions at all.
Right.
It implies that the culture you were raised in hands you a specific emotional palette. The physiological arousal, the heart rate, the sweating might be universal, but the label your brain slaps onto that arousal, and therefore the emotion you consciously experience, is handed down to you by your ancestors.
And the text summarizes this beautifully. In brief, it might be said that there are certain basic emotions that are expressed and understood by all, despite their cultural and ethnic differences, and there are certain others that are specific to a particular culture.
It perfectly ties it together.
So we've covered the theory, We understand the biological osmoreceptors and the cultural grammar of anger. But what happens when the thunderstorm of emotion gets out of control? We need practical tools.
Yes, the survival guide part of the text.
The final part of this deep dive transitions from theory into a survival guide. Let's read the introduction to Managing Negative Emotions. Try living a day in which you do not feel any emotion. You would realize that it is difficult even to imagine a life without emotions. Emotions are a part of our daily life and existence. They form the very fabric of our life and interpersonal relations.
Which makes sense.
Effective emotion management is the key to effective social functioning in modern times. The following tips might prove useful to you for achieving the desired balance of emotions.
They open with a thought experiment. A day without emotion isn't peace, it's paralysis. Without emotion, you wouldn't know what to eat, who to talk to, or what to avoid. You would be a robot without a directive.
But because they are so powerful, they require management.
Exactly.
And the authors immediately highlight the extreme end of the spectrum, when an emotion shatters the system. They include Box 8.1 on post-traumatic stress disorder. It reads, "A disaster produces serious disruption of the functioning of human society, resulting in widespread material or environmental loss, which cannot be dealt with immediately with the existing resources.
Okay.
Disaster may be natural, like earthquakes, a climate tsunami, or man-made, like war. The trauma an individual experiences during a disaster may range from mere perception of such an event to actually encountering it, which may be life-threatening.
They are defining an event that radically overwhelms the organism's coping mechanisms.
And here is the psychological fallout. Either of these conditions may lead to development of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD,
Right.
where the person tends to re-experience the event through flashbacks and get overwhelming thoughts about the event even after a substantial period of time.
The flashbacks.
This condition makes a person emotionally disturbed and the person fails to adopt an appropriate coping strategy in regular activities. Emotions manifest in uniquely recognizable patterns with maladaptive behavior, like depression and autonomic arousal.
To map this back to our earlier concepts, PTSD is the homeostasis cycle breaking down. The brain experiences a life-threatening need survival and generates a massive sympathetic nervous system drive, terror, adrenaline.
Right.
But even after the physical danger has passed, the brain fails to achieve the reduction of arousal phase. The alarm bell gets stuck in the on position.
That's horrifying.
The person's autonomic system acts as if the tiger is still in the room, leading to flashbacks and chronic exhaustion. It requires deep therapeutic intervention to reset that biological and psychological loop.
It is a devastating breakdown. But the authors also address a much more common, everyday breakdown that many of our listeners have faced. They include Box 8.2, Management of Examination Anxiety. Let's read how they define it. For most of us, an approaching examination brings about a feeling of a churning stomach and anxiety. In fact, any situation which involves performing a task and the awareness of being evaluated for the performance is an anxiety-provoking situation for most people.
This applies to far more than a school exam. It's a job interview, a public speech, a difficult conversation with a partner. The awareness of being evaluated is the trigger.
A certain level of anxiety is definitely essential as it motivates and pushes us to put up our best performance. But a high level of anxiety becomes an impediment in optimum performance and achievement. An anxious individual is highly aroused physiologically and emotionally, and hence is not able to perform to the best of his abilities.
I appreciate that they validate the anxiety first. A certain level is definitely essential. If you have zero anxiety about an interview, you won't prep and you'll bomb it. The drive energizes behavior.
But too much drive causes the engine to flood.
And to manage this, the authors introduce a brilliant binary framework for coping. You either manage the problem or you manage the physiological symptom.
They write, an examination is a potentially stress-provoking situation, and like other stressful situations, coping involves two strategies, i.e., monitoring or taking effective action, and blunting or avoiding the situation. Monitoring involves taking effective and direct action to deal with the stressful situation.
Let's run through these quickly. Monitoring is proactive problem solving.
Right. The first one, prepare well. Prepare well for the examination and prepare well in advance. Give yourself ample time. Familiarize yourself with the pattern of question papers and frequently ask questions. This gives you a sense of predictability and control and reduces the stress potential of the examination.
This makes sense. Knowledge reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty is a massive driver of anxiety. Eliminate the unknown and you lower the arousal. What's next?
Have a rehearsal.
Right.
Make yourself go through a mock examination. Ask your friend to test your knowledge. You can also rehearse mentally in your mind. Visualize yourself taking the examination completely relaxed and confident, and then passing with flying colors.
Behavioral rehearsal. It builds neural pathways so that when the real event happens, your brain thinks, I've been here before, I know what to do.
And related to that is inoculation. Inoculate yourself against stress. Exposure through rehearsals and role-playing prepares you physically and mentally to face the examination situation better and with confidence.
I love this concept. Just like a vaccine gives your immune system a small, dead piece of a virus to train on, psychological inoculation gives you a small, manageable dose of stress. You practice your speech in front of 3 friends so that the stress of speaking to 300 people later doesn't break you.
The final 2 monitoring strategies are positive thinking. Have faith in yourself. Structure your thoughts with systematically listing the thoughts that worry you and then rationally dealing with them one by one. Emphasize on your strengths. Suggest to yourself to be positive and enthusiastic.
Cognitive restructuring.
Seek support. Do not hesitate to ask for help from your friends, parents, teachers, or seniors. Talking about a stressful situation to a close person makes one feel light and helps gain insight. The situation may not be as bad as it seems.
So that's rational cognitive restructuring and social affiliation. You're actively tearing down the intellectual source of the anxiety.
But what if it's too late for that?
What do you mean?
Like the exam is in 5 minutes, the interview starts right now. You can't prep anymore, but your heart is beating out of your chest. This is where the second half of the framework comes in.
Ah, the blunting.
The text continues. On the other hand, blunting strategies involve avoiding the stressful situation. True, avoidance is neither desirable nor possible in an examination situation, but the following techniques may prove useful.
Blunting. You aren't fixing the root cause. You are forcefully down-regulating your nervous system. You are treating the symptom.
First is relaxation technique.
Right.
Learn to relax. Relaxation techniques help you calm your nerves and give you an opportunity to reframe your thoughts. There are many different relaxation techniques. In general, this involves sitting or lying down at a comfortable posture in a quiet place, relaxing your muscles, reducing the external stimulation, as well as minimizing the flow of thoughts and focusing.
Deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. You are using the body to hack the brain. By voluntarily slowing your breath, you signal to your hypothalamus, tiger is gone, we are safe, forcing the physiological arousal to drop.
And the opposite approach. Exercise. A stressful situation overactivates the sympathetic nervous system. Exercise helps in channelizing the excess energy generated by this. A brief period of light exercise or active sport will help you concentrate better on your studies.
If the adrenaline is already in your bloodstream, breathing might not be enough. You literally have to burn it off. Go for a run, do push-ups, give the fight or flight energy a place to go so your body can return to baseline.
Both monitoring and blunting are essential tools in the toolkit.
Definitely.
The text then pivots back to general tips for managing all negative emotions, not just anxiety. I'm going to read this bulleted list. It's essentially a manual for emotional regulation.
Go ahead.
Enhance self-awareness. Be aware of your own emotions and feelings. Try to gain insight into the how and why of your feelings.
Number 1 is always awareness.
Appraise the situation objectively. It has been proposed that emotion is preceded by evaluation of the event. If the event is experienced as disturbing, your sympathetic nervous system is activated and you feel stressed. If you do not experience the event as disturbing, then there is no stress. Hence, it is you who decides whether to feel sad and anxious or happy and relaxed.
Okay, stop right there.
Right. It is you who decides whether to feel sad and anxious. That is an incredibly bold, almost confrontational claim by the authors. It implies we have total cognitive control over our emotional weather.
It connects back to the definition of an emotion requiring cognitive interpretation. The physiological arousal, a racing heart, is neutral. Is it fear or is it excitement? It depends entirely on how you evaluate the event.
Like a roller coaster.
Exactly. If a roller coaster is disturbing to you, you feel fear. If it's a fun challenge, you feel exhilarated. The physical data is the same. The cognitive appraisal changes the emotion.
The list continues with techniques to change that appraisal. Do some self-monitoring. This involves constant or periodic evaluation of your past accomplishments, emotional and physical states, real and vicarious experiences. A positive appraisal would enhance your faith in yourself and lead to an enhanced feeling of wellness and contentment.
Positive appraisal.
Engage in self-modeling. Be the ideal for yourself. Repeatedly observe the best parts of your past performance and use them as an inspiration and motivation to perform better in the future.
Using your own highlights.
Perceptual reorganization and cognitive restructuring. Try viewing the events differently and visualize the other side of the coin. Restructure your thoughts to enhance positive and reassuring feelings and eliminate negative thoughts.
Perceptual reorganization, that's the psychological term for reframing. Your boss gives you harsh feedback. You can appraise it as an attack, generating anger, or you can perceptually reorganize it as a free coaching session that will make you undeniably better, generating determination. It's cognitive alchemy.
The final tips lean into behavior and affiliation. Be creative. Find and develop an interest or a hobby. Engage in an activity that interests and amuses you.
Creativity.
Develop and nurture good relationships. Choose your friends carefully. In the company of happy and cheerful friends, you will feel happy in general.
Affiliation.
Have empathy. Try understanding others' feelings too. Make your relationships meaningful and valuable. Seek as well as provide support mutually. Participate in community service. Help yourself by helping others. By doing community service, for example, helping an intellectually challenged child learn an adaptive skill, you will gain important insights about your own difficulties.
It all circles back to those psychosocial motives. Feeding curiosity through hobbies and feeding affiliation through empathy and community service. You regulate your own internal weather by connecting deeply with the weather of others.
But the authors save their most radical, uncompromising stance for the most destructive emotion of all. Let's read the section, Managing Your Anger.
This one is intense.
Anger is a negative emotion. It carries the mind away. Or in other words, the person loses control on behavioral functions during the state of anger. The major source of anger is the frustration of motives.
True.
However, anger is not a reflex. Rather, it is a result of our thinking. Neither is it automatic nor uncontrollable and caused by others, but it is a self-induced choice that the individual makes. Anger is a result of your thinking and hence is controllable by your own thoughts only.
Wow.
Okay, I have to challenge the authors heavily here. Anger is not a reflex. It is a self-induced choice. Are we really letting this text claim that anger isn't a reflex?
No.
If someone walks up to me on the street and unexpectedly throws a punch at my face, my amygdala floods my system with adrenaline, my muscles tense, and I feel a surge of aggressive energy before my conscious prefrontal cortex even registers the threat. How can the text possibly claim that is a self-induced choice?
It is a controversial framing, and your pushback is biologically accurate. The startle response and the sympathetic arousal, the adrenaline flood you just described, is absolutely an involuntary reflex. You cannot control the initial chemical dump.
Right.
But the authors are drawing a strict line between that initial arousal and the sustained emotion of anger.
Explain that difference.
If the person who threw the punch was actually slipping on ice and flailing their arms to catch their balance, your initial biological arousal is the same. But the moment your brain realizes it was an accident, the arousal dissipates. You feel relief, maybe concern. You don't feel anger. You only feel anger if your cognitive brain decides, that person is disrespecting me, they meant to hurt me, this is an injustice. The narrative you spin the thinking is what fuels the fire. The spark is reflexive. Keeping the fire burning is a choice.
Wow, that is a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
When someone cuts you off in traffic, it feels entirely like they caused your anger. But the text is arguing the other driver just created a neutral physical event on the road. My internal dialogue, they did that on purpose. They are an idiot, is what actually generated the anger.
Exactly. And the text provides a list of key points to enforce this discipline. Certain key points in anger management are as follows. Recognize the power of your thoughts. Realize you alone can control it. Do not engage in self-talk that burns. Do not magnify negative feelings.
Self-talk that burns. I love that phrasing. We are so often the arsonists of our own minds. We sit there rehearsing the argument in our heads, magnifying the slight, throwing gasoline on the fire.
The list continues with how to stop the fire. Do not ascribe intentions and ulterior motives to others. Resist having irrational beliefs about people and events. Try to find constructive ways of expressing your anger. Have control on the degree and duration of anger that you choose to express.
It's hard work.
Look inward, not outward for anger control. Give yourself time to change. It takes time and effort to change a habit.
Do not ascribe intentions. If the person cutting you off in traffic was actually rushing a sick child to the hospital, you wouldn't be angry. You would be deeply empathetic. It's your assumption of their bad intention that ruins your own day. Look inward, not outward.
It's profound, but as the last bullet points out, rewiring a habit of reactivity takes immense time and effort. We have spent a lot of time analyzing deficits, tension, anxiety, and anger. But the document doesn't end in the dark. It ends by exploring what happens when the human system is running optimally.
Yes, let's finish on the peak. I'm going to read the final section, enhancing positive emotions. Our emotions have a purpose. They help us adapt to the ever-changing environment and are important for our survival and well-being. Negative emotions like fear, anger, or disgust prepare us mentally and physically for taking immediate action towards the stimulus that is threatening.
It's a toolkit.
For example, if there was no fear, we would have caught a poisonous snake in our hand. Though negative emotions protect us in such situations. But excessive or inappropriate use of these emotions can become life-threatening to us, as it can harm our immune system and have serious consequences for our health.
It elegantly balances the evolutionary story. Negative emotions aren't bad. They are the survival toolkit. Fear stops you from grabbing the snake. Disgust stops you from eating rotting meat. They do this by radically narrowing your focus.
You're not daydreaming.
Right. When you are terrified, you aren't thinking about philosophy or what's for dinner tomorrow. You are laser focused on the threat right in front of you.
But the text warns that staying in that narrowed negative state is biologically toxic.
Yeah.
Chronic stress literally degrades your immune system.
Yeah.
And then it reveals the true superpower of the other half of our emotional spectrum. The text reads, positive emotions such as hope, joy, optimism, contentment, and gratitude energize us and enhance our sense of emotional well-being. When we experience positive affect, we display a greater preference for a large variety of actions and ideas. We can think of more possibilities and options to solve whatever problems we face, and thus, we become proactive.
In psychology, this is known as the broaden and build theory.
Broaden and build.
Yeah. If negative emotions narrow your focus to survive, positive emotions broaden your focus to thrive. Joy, contentment, and gratitude send a chemical signal to your brain that says, the tiger is gone. We are safe. And when the brain knows it is safe, it opens up.
The authors illustrate this with a fantastic piece of research. Psychologists have found that people who were shown films depicting joy and contentment came up with more ideas regarding things they would like to do as compared to those who were shown films evoking anger and fear.
It's a literal expansion of the mind. Show people a scary film and their cognitive horizon shrinks. Show them a joyful film and suddenly they want to learn Italian, call an old friend, and start a garden.
Positive emotions give us the cognitive bandwidth to be creative, as the text concludes. Positive emotions give us a greater ability to cope with adverse circumstances and quickly return to a normal state. They help us set up long-term plans and goals and form new relationships.
It's all about building for the future.
And it gives these ways to enhance it. Personality traits of optimism, hopefulness, happiness, and a positive self-regard. Finding positive meaning in dire circumstances. Having quality connections with others and supportive network of close relationships. Being engaged in work and gaining mastery. A faith that embodies social support, purpose, and hope, leading a life of purpose. Positive interpretations of most daily events.
It all connects. It ties all the way back to the top of Maslow's pyramid. Gaining mastery is the need for achievement. Quality connections is the need for affiliation. Leading a life of purpose is self-actualization.
It is the ultimate roadmap for the human machine.
It really is.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We've gone from the microscopic biological reality of osmoreceptors shrinking in your brain to cause thirst, all the way up through the psychosocial needs for power and achievement.
You covered Maslow, too.
Right. We dismantled the hierarchy of needs, explored the cultural grammar of emotional expression like the 46 Tahitian words for anger, and finally examined the cognitive choice to manage our own physiological storms. I want to congratulate you, the listener, on navigating this massive, comprehensive psychological deep dive with us. By unpacking these texts word by word, we've hopefully given you a blueprint to the hidden engines running beneath every single action you take.
It is a lot to process, and it challenges how we see ourselves. If I may leave the listener with one final provocative thought to mull over based on everything we've just read.
Please do.
We learned that our foundational drives are dictated by biological alarms like glucose levels and cell dehydration that we have zero conscious control over. And we learned that our emotional expressions and labels are heavily programmed by our specific cultural environment.
Right.
So if our drives are biological reflexes and our emotional responses are cultural scripts, how much of your daily behavior is truly your own free will and how much is just your biology and your culture holding the steering wheel?
That is a staggering question. Are we the drivers, or are we just complex biological vehicles responding to low fuel lights and the cultural rules of the road? Keep a close eye on your own motivational cycles today. Notice your deficits, your drives, and your reactions. Notice the choices you make when the tension rises. Thank you so much for joining us and for
Yeah.
taking this deep dive.